So, welcome to another session of the Ecom Edge, the first e-commerce podcast focused on how enterprise brands, manufacturers, and teams like yours can be smarter with data, technology, and resources to gain that very important competitive edge. So, marketers, today's going to be really a great day for you. Doesn't matter if you're brand, demand, or digital side. You're going to love this session. We have digital marketing influencer, CEO, and founder of BlueTuskr, Andrew Maff with us, and we're going to talk customer acquisition and touch a little bit on customer retention. You're listening to the Ecom Edge, and I'm Diane Burley, your host. Andrew, how are you?
Doing good. How you doing? Thanks for that intro. I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. No problem. So BlueTuskr is a full-service marketing agency, and you're also host of the E-Comm show. So
Yep.
Which do you like to be known as, the CEO of BlueTuskr or podcaster extraordinaire?
Oh, man. Well, it depends on where I am, right? So if we're on a podcast, I'm going to say podcast extraordinaire, which will definitely go on a business card one day. But if you want to talk marketing, then that's probably going to be more beneficial that I'm part of an agency.
And it's not just marketing, it's marketing for online companies that are selling online. Tell me a little bit about the online sellers that BlueTuskr has helped in just across the board.
Yeah, so we are almost exclusively e-commerce. The layman term being, selling a product online. Granted, we actually work with a handful of SaaS companies and stuff too, because to me, if I'm trying to get someone to transact online, that's kind of e-commerce. But honestly, mostly e-commerce, like traditional e-commerce, a strong focus on omni-channel. So a lot of the sellers we work with are on multiple marketplaces as well as on Shopify or any website at that point. Most of them tend to be on Shopify. And a lot of times we tend to get the sellers that are on marketplaces that want to start to build a brand off of those marketplaces. 9 times out of 10, that's Amazon. And we try to develop strategies that will allow them to kind of baby step out of Amazon instead of taking the jump into spending tens of $1,000s on a website and hoping that something works. So we kind of help navigate those waters before they take that leap.
So that's interesting. So what are those first little steps they tend to take? What does it encompass?
All right, here we go. So let's say you're on Amazon and you're selling. Let's say you have one product, right? We'll just make it easy. You have one product. You've started to sell a good amount of it. You've proven the product concept. Like people are buying it, the listing's working well, it converts, you're ready to kind of scale it. The next thing I suggest is obviously if they have their brand registered, develop a storefront on Amazon, start driving sponsored brand traffic to the storefront and have the basically the direct add to cart option from the storefront there. Now what you're trying to do is see if you can get your storefront to convert instead of just your listing. So you focus on that, get your storefront all optimized, you're good to go. Then from there, depending on your product, start doing Facebook ads, Google ads, some kind of advertising directly to the storefront. So now what you're trying to do is find out
brand oriented versus product oriented.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I prefer to do the social route because then you're going to start to build your audience. Mm-hmm. If you do the Google route, you're really just trying to see if you can get off Amazon traffic, but you're still not going to be able to own any of that data, or at least from social, you might get some of it. So you start driving traffic to the storefront. Now what you're trying to do is see, can you get off Amazon traffic to convert on that storefront? Once you've figured out like, okay, this is working. Now you've realized like, okay, there is an audience off Amazon I can work with. So then from there, usually what I suggest is instead of taking the plunge into creating a website, and the reason I usually say this is because if you spend like let's say just a couple $1,000s on a website and just do a random Shopify theme, you're immediately hurting yourself because this big brand that you're trying to build and you're trying to showcase, you're now putting this garbage storefront out there to showcase your brand, and no one wants to work like that. Like, no, if they're going to land there, of course it's not going to convert. So what I usually suggest is take a baby step, build out a landing page that's a really nice, well-branded landing page. Start driving the traffic to that landing page, but on that landing page, have 2 options. Have the option for them to obviously add directly to cart and let them check out through if you use Shopify or something, or have like an available on Amazon button and let them still go to Amazon if they want to.
But take them to your branded store on
Exactly.
Amazon.
Yeah. So basically, you're now doing what you can to grow your email list, grow your actual customer base off of Amazon, but you're still giving them the opportunity to shop on Amazon. Because one of the issues you'll have is you don't have any reviews off Amazon. There's no social proof. Your brand isn't big enough off Amazon. So they're going to go to your landing page and they're going to be like, I've never really heard of this company. And no one wants to be like the first one to try something. So by showing that you sell on Amazon, it's a little bit like you're kind of like you've already proven the concept elsewhere.
Do you see people round tripping? They go to Amazon and say, "Oh, look, they're real," and then go back and buy.
Actually, so I started this like kind of concept 6-7 years ago from watching my wife shop, because she'll actually she'll get hit with some Instagram thing. She'll end up on their website, and if the website doesn't have like any reviews or it's not really cool looking, she would go to Amazon to see if they had any reviews there. And then because I'd tell her about my job, she knows like, no, I'll go back to their site and purchase there because I know their margins are better. And I was like, thanks, babe. But like, but she'll do it the other way, where she'll shop on Amazon and she'll see like maybe they don't have a lot of reviews, or maybe they do have a lot of reviews, but I want to know who this brand is. And so she'll actually go and Google them and she'll look at what their social is. Like, she does so much due diligence for buying the most random stuff. But when I noticed her doing that, I realized, I was like, wow, it's like the customer journey is so fluid, because there's so many places that you can purchase a product in most cases now, that by focusing each individual channel on its own, you're actually kind of hurting yourself, because you're not allowing the customer to just have a good experience, which is essentially shop wherever you're most comfortable. Here's all of the places we're available. And so by building out this concept of helping sellers kind of baby step through stuff, we can show them like, hey, there is an audience off of Amazon, but you didn't need to spend tens of thousands of dollars to build a website first. Or, hey, your website will convert. And you can actually, when you do the available on Amazon buttons, you can actually just put a conversion code on those and just track how many people actually went to Amazon. So then you can, based on what your conversion rate is on Amazon, you can make a judgment off of how many sales you got. And then one day do an A/B test, remove the button and see what happens. And then that's how you slowly get there.
So you mentioned data several times now, right at the beginning and continuing on. When people are first selling on Amazon, is there much data to be looking at?
I mean, yes and no. Like, you can use something along the lines of like a Helium 10 and do all the research into search volume and what some competition may or may not be getting. Then once you actually start running your own ads, you pull your keyword report and all that fun stuff and dig into your own data and really try to decipher like what's working, what's not working, what's my conversion rate, all that fun stuff. But it's Amazon, so obviously there's a ton of limitation. You don't know who purchased. You can't really contact them. You don't know a name, phone number, email. You have nothing. Getting repeat purchasers is really complicated. So to me, in my opinion, even though there's a ton of Amazon sellers that will disagree, I think that building a brand solely on Amazon is incredibly complicated, because you don't really have the same tools and the same data that you would have if you were on a Shopify or a BigCommerce or something like that.
Well, and it's risky too. It's not just complicated, it's risky. I mean, you're giving all of your everything to Amazon, to a third party. Mm-hmm. You don't have any control over your own destiny. And you're certainly not building that customer relationship that you would when they come to your site or come to your Instagram page or whatever. Yeah. Do they have people on board that understand how to look at the data, or is that where your company comes in and says, you should be looking at this?
That's pretty much where we come in, because that's the other thing too, is like if you're a smaller seller, I find that the really small guys, respectfully, and I understand why, but they get so deep in the data that they'll find one metric that they're not a fan of and they'll focus on improving it. And I go, you spent so much time getting that 0.01% better than if you would actually just put all of that effort into expanding and diversifying. Because there's also a lot of data points that, like, while they're interesting to read about, they may not be completely relevant. So, your conversion rate is obviously really great, but who really cares about how many impressions your ads got if they're not clicking? So like impressions are down. Be like, I don't care. How many people actually went to your listing? That's what I want to know. How many people actually purchased? So like even when we run ads because we've realized like how fluid the shopping experience is. If we're running Facebook ads, Google ads, and we're helping them with their Amazon ads, I will obviously look at each individual channel, but the metric I care about the most is across every single channel. How much money did you spend in advertising? And then how much did you get across all of your channels? Because there's been countless times we'll increase, let's say, Facebook ad spend by 10%. Their website will see a 7 or 8% increase in revenue, but then their Amazon will actually see an additional 2 or 3% increase because someone bounced and went to the site. So by looking at them in individual channels, you're not realizing that because digital is everywhere now, it's like little mini billboards. And if they are going to find wherever you're wherever they want to shop. So by looking at everything holistically and then digging in to make those adjustments, that's where we make sure like we're hitting targets of really the only thing that matters, in my opinion, which is profitability.
Now, you also work with larger companies too, not just the real small folks, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think really we kind of, once they hit like, I want to say like between 35 and 50 million a year is where like, okay, you should probably do most of this stuff in-house. A lot of the times, like we act as their outsourced marketing department, but once they get to a size like that, we become more like a puzzle piece where they have 1 or 2, maybe even 3 people internally handling something, and we're just doing everything else. Conversion
rate, average order value, lifetime value. What's the most important one?
I mean, it depends on what you're trying to optimize for at the time. But if we're just going across the board, I think lifetime value, 100%. And it also depends on the end goal, right? Like that's always one thing I always ask about sellers. Like, are you looking to exit? Because if you're solely on Amazon, I think they average like I just did this report and I can't remember what the number is, but I think you average like a 2 to 4x EBITDA if you are a FBA seller. But if you actually are an FBA seller, but also have an audience and your own brand, it can get closer to up to like 6 or 7x. And then once you clear 8 figures, it actually gets like 6 to 8. So by diversifying, you're actually providing more value as time goes on. And so if I'm trying to eventually exit one day, I'm going to want to paint the picture of the lifetime value of these customers. How much money is this guy who's buying my company going to make as time goes on, so I can justify the price I'm looking for to exit?
Now, we do a lot of our own research, primary research as well, and we've found that 80% of frequent shoppers claim to only shop with brands that offer personalization, and another 66% of shoppers report that coming across content lacking personalization sort of discourages them from wanting to continue the transaction. Mm-hmm. Does that fit in your world too? Do you see that? And what are some of the strategies people are doing to try and personalize at scale?
Yeah, I absolutely think that that's accurate. It's kind of hearsay. It's a little bit speculation because you'd have to do like a ton of market research to kind of get that judgment. But if you just think of the way that people like to shop, everyone always says, people don't want to buy from a business. They want to buy from a person. And that's why when you have like, a little chat option, or you have like a sales rep for any B2B commerce sellers or anything like that, they have someone to go to. 9 times out of 10, they're just going to go to that person and skip over the site because they like that personalized feel as they're working on it. If you don't have those options, customizing the site to a point where it can adjust based on who's there or maybe what you already know about that person makes life a lot easier, because it's also chances are it's reducing clicks, or it's also just getting straight to the point of why they came to your site. While, yeah, we want everyone to spend every minute of waking hour on our sites, it's not going to happen. We actually want them to get in and get out as quick as they can while getting the value they were looking for. So like from a personalization side, you think of like pop-ups can be adjusted based on where they came from. Obviously, shameless plug with you guys, you have your search options, like being able to actually, cater to what they've been searching and showing them specifically what the search option like that comes with Shopify is trash. I hate it. Like it just doesn't do well. So 9 times out of 10, you gotta get something.
Listeners, come to Coveo.
It's so bad. So something like a Coveo that actually and then you can pull all that data. Like that's the other thing is it's Shopify search. Like you can't even really pull the data of what it is people are searching, at least not very well. So being able to see what are people searching, now you can adjust your homepage. Most people are searching this. Let's bring that up to the A spot. Or, no one is searching for this. Let's put it on sale. So there's a lot of data there that you can adjust your marketing strategy for that no one really leverages.
One of the things that has been driving retailers in particular nuts is the fact that they've had to discount so much. They've been eating into margins. And then when you find yourself with trying to entice customers by offering discounts, and then you add in the fact that maybe they're returning product and you have to deal with that too, you're actually losing money. And unless you're being like Amazon, you have investors saying it's okay, lose as much money as you want, just gather customers. Most of us need to make a living. We need to actually show a profit at the end of the year. What is the strategy on discounting these days? Is it are they backing away from it? Do they offer it really as a way to bring them back to cart as an exit offer? Or when is discounting coming to play?
To me, discounting is a fail-safe, right? Like you can't really go, I don't want to say you can't go wrong with it because that's not exactly how I want to word that, but like you can't, it's always like if you can't think of anything, toss a discount on it. Like that's always what it ends up being. Your first pop-up that shows up, get 10% off your first order. Oh, hey, here's your abandoned cart email, 10% for you to come back. Or, hey, customer win back. You haven't shopped with us in 6 months. Here's 15% off to come back. Like those are pretty standard if you just don't want to get creative with it. What we try to do is kind of think as much as we can a little bit outside the box, specifically because of what you just mentioned. Right? Like margins are getting tighter. You don't really want to increase your pricing. You don't want to give in to the current inflation, but supply chain's forcing you to do it. So by discounting it, it's kind of like, how is this even going to help? So you try to think of like add-on value that you can give, like buy this and get this for free, something that you have really great margins on that you can give, or get this 50% off, like make them actually do something before giving them anything. Or sometimes what we also have tried to do is work with other sellers. So if we have, someone we're working with, actually right now we were just talking about this. We have someone we work with who sells collegiate apparel. So it's like college t-shirts and stuff for like tailgating. And we happen to have someone else who does tailgating for like college party supplies and stuff. So not competitive, but the exact same audience. So we'll actually do deals with them where buy X and get 10% off their site. And then buy X from them, get 10% off their site. So it's actually, you're kind of getting a new audience, and that's kind of worth it because you're especially, that's kind of goes back actually. So I know I'm stumbling, but like lifetime value, right? Like if your lifetime value is decent, yeah, give them 10% off because the lifetime it'll work out. But if it's typically like a one-time purchase, then you might not want to.
But you have to know your customers. How many actually know their customers? How many know which ones are the good customers, and how many, just it's sort of a guess.
I think I would assume pretty comfortably that let's do 7 figures and up. I would say 80% of them don't really know who their customer is.
Okay.
I think a lot of them, they know either who they want their customer to be, or there's been several times where they've had a lot of like, not exactly research, but a lot of like documentation of who their ideal customer is. But then you go and look at like their Google Analytics, or there's a ton of other platforms out there. You can kind of even back into Facebook and get an understanding like that's not who your customer is at all. I know it's who you want it to be, but it's just not. So sometimes I find that sellers are so focused on selling to the one person that they really want to sell to, they don't realize they're ignoring the people that are actually interested in their product.
I'm curious. I just thought of this when you were talking about your wife shopping before. During the pandemic, I spent a lot of time, everybody was staying home. It was the new normal. And I was, scrolling on Instagram, and I was buying stuff all over Instagram for a while, and that stopped. I'm not doing it as much, but I'm wondering, does that my pattern reflect other people too? Were we all just on, and I was buying bundles of things. I'd never heard of a brand before. I was buying workout clothes, and it was like, yeah, we'll throw you 3 pairs of shorts for this low price. It's like, why not? So
yeah.
Are people still spending on Amazon or Instagram? And other social channels like that?
Yeah, they are. It's definitely changed. Like the categories have changed. Like food and beverage is way down. And that makes sense because you think most people were pretty much stuck at home. So they were okay with buying, a 12, 24 pack of a new water that they haven't heard of before and wanted to try it because they can't go to the store. Now that's starting to fall. The interesting thing is that luxury and apparel are up. And the odd thing is there, and I guess the theory is that luxury, while we are in an inflationary period, rich people usually aren't affected by that. So they're okay with it. And so they're still shopping. And then apparel, where actually the assumption is basically now that there's a norm and people are getting out more and more and more. I mean, at this point, most people have just said COVID's over, even though clearly it's not. But now they're realizing they're going out more. So they're buying clothes to actually go back out into public. So it's an interesting way of kind of realizing like, yeah, there was definitely a ton of shopping during, 2020, 2021. And now I think that it's not exactly fallen off, but it's shifted to who that category is that's actually getting all those purchases.
One of the, I always like to go down the rabbit hole when I'm going to interview somebody. So I discovered that you were quite a drummer at one point. And in fact, you were touring and doing all sorts of stuff. How is this like music? How is this world of the digital marketing agency like that?
So I actually, funny enough, so I was a drummer for years. My big claim to fame, we played a festival once, and technically Pitbull opened for us. It's not exactly how it went, but it's hilarious. And I love saying that because it's my favorite thing to say, but because I hate Pitbull. But basically it is very similar. So that's around when I started my first agency. So I started my first agency in college. It's around when I was playing. And it started off where I was doing a lot of promotion for concerts that were coming into our area, our own shows. And then I had other artists starting to ask me. And then what happened was those venues started to ask me just to do anything that came through there. Then it kind of got a little hospitality-ish because I'm helping with the venues. And then all of a sudden they had shops and now I'm helping retail. And so I just started an agency that went there. And then I got away from retail and went into e-com and basically stayed in e-com the whole time. And to be honest, at the end of the day, the one thing that I realized was it really was still e-commerce because a majority of what I was focused on was selling tickets. And that's still a purchase online. So at the end of the day, my job was to while I want to drive people to the show, I started to realize what I really want is to drive people to this page and then get them to purchase a ticket. And then hopefully they show up. If they don't, I don't care. I still got paid. So like, that's kind of one of those things where like, I realized like, okay, I definitely see the correlation. Plus back then it was like the wild west of social media. So you could grow, at the time, there wasn't even really an Instagram. So you could grow like a Facebook page to tens of thousands of followers within like a month or two. Now that's not happening.
So I'm curious, where did the name BlueTuskr come from? And why isn't it drumstick or something?
So I've been, my first agency was called Ronzio Digital. And Ronzio stood for, what was it? Buzz. I think it's buzz in Italian. So it was like building a buzz. It was mostly social stuff. And then I was at another agency with a partner of mine, and I started realizing all these agency names are so boring. It's like growth hack digital, growth people are us, like just dumb stuff. And I'm like, you know what? I want to pull something out of a hat and just do that. And one of the things I also realized was that if you have like a really traditional agency name, you end up blending in everywhere and no one can find you because they start Googling you and there's 500 different versions of like growth agency, growth hack people, like all that kind of stuff. So I was like, I'm going to make up a name and then I'm just going to build the brand. And then it's going to be easier for people to find me because I'm not going to have any competition on this keyword. And so I've always been a big fan of elephants. There's some concepts around like, how we act as like a partner. We try not to just pitch people on like spend more money. Like in my eyes, if your business is doing well, you'll stay with us longer. So I'm fine if you don't spend an arm and a leg right now. And so there's something about the family orientation of elephants and how, basically the way that they act. But either way, I've always just been a fan of elephants. And then my wife and I met in high school. Our high school colors were blue and gray. And so since elephants are gray, I went with blue. And then one of the companies that the company that acquired our last agency, they renamed and took the E out of their name. And I wasn't a fan of the place. So I thought it would be hilarious if I did it too. And so I took the E out of Tuskr.
All right.
You asked.
I did. I was curious. I couldn't figure out. I was looking all over for everything. I couldn't figure out I went down that rabbit hole and never came up with elephants anywhere. So it was interesting. One of the things that you've given as a success characteristic, if you will, for marketers is that they should be an entrepreneur at heart. How important is that for the folks when you're working with them, and how do you help bring that to the surface? Because a lot of times you're following orders, right? And sometimes you don't really get along if you're thinking too out of the box. So how do you help them sort of straddle that line and stoke the heart of the entrepreneur and at the same time not lose their corporate job?
It's a good point. It definitely tends to be a source of, it's definitely what's allowed us to be so successful, but it also can really frustrate some of the sellers we work with, because I make sure everyone on the team acts as if this is our business. Like, would you do this for your business? And so while I want to tell you like, hey, your ad spend is doing really well, we think you should increase it, I actually know that you're having supply chain issues, and based on where you're at seasonality, this just doesn't seem like a good move. Most marketers would sit there, look at one KPI and be like, you should increase, you should spend more, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this. And we have a ton of sellers we work with where we're only doing a handful of the things that we're capable of doing, but only because I don't think that they're in a good place to do it yet. So we just don't offer it. And I think that being an entrepreneur yourself, even any marketer, I always think that they should always grab like some kind of small thing on the side, even if they're like freelancing or something, that they're just running their own like small LLC or anything, so that they get an understanding of what it's like to spend their own money before they go jumping into sellers like accounts and spending an arm and a leg and going, I don't understand why you don't want to spend $10,000 on this campaign. Be like, well, you do it, and then understand why they don't want to. Because when we go to run our own ads and stuff, I'm really nitpicky. I'm like, what is this? Why are we doing this? Should we be spending this? Should we be doing that? And I go, yeah, this is exactly why we treat our sellers the same way, because I know what it's like. So I feel like every marketer should have an understanding of the business collectively instead of just making judgment on what they think is going to help, when in reality, they're not even understanding the rest of the business.
As we wind down here, is there one piece of advice that online sellers should consider when they're looking to bring in new audience members? Is it what is that one? Is there one? Maybe there isn't. Maybe you're going to say, Diane, it's all unique.
So by new audience, so you mean like targeting kind of a different customer profile? For the most
exactly.
Part? Definitely do your research and then find a way to start slow. Like usually what we'll do if we're trying to let's see what, this type of audience will do. Usually what I'd suggest is just build a landing page that's catered to them, so that when they end up somewhere, it's really catered to that audience. And then I usually say do something on like a Facebook or a TikTok where you're targeting that interest specifically of that audience that you're going after, and just see how they start to react to it. Start really low, even start with like a traffic campaign. See what the CTR is like. Like even if the CTR is decent, at least you know that they were interested. Maybe they're not purchasing for a different reason, but if they're clicking, that audience is interested. So it starts to tell you that, okay, that could actually be a decent audience. Let's explore this a little bit more. But it's when you go ham on wanting to just go after a completely new customer. For like, let's do a whole campaign. Let's spend X. We know that this customer base is going to do really well, but you don't know until you know. And right. So by jumping in, head first, I'm more of a fan of like, well, let's dip our toe in before we go flying and seeing if, this random customer profile is going to be interested or not.
When you build that landing page, are you putting more than one product on it, or can you do that? Or do you just have one and then you're...
it depends on the product. Depends on the product line. Okay. Like, how do I give you an example here? Well, so there's a B2B e-commerce seller we work with who sells like 3D body scanners. And so while they mainly focus on fitness centers, we've started testing out different audiences. So we'll build a new landing page specifically for med spas or, doctors or something like that. In which case, all right, so now we're going to adjust this landing page specific to them and it's only one product. But in other cases, we have someone that does, these large concrete grinder things. They're also on a B2B side. And for them, they'll have guys that solely do garage floors, guys that solely do basements, like things like that. And so we'll build out the different landing pages, but I don't know the size of their project. So I have to show them like the full breadth of all of these will help with this one thing that I know you as the customer profile are interested in.
That's great. So you do B2B as well?
Yeah, we do a lot of B2B e-commerce. It's not a majority of the business, but it's definitely the ones that are there, have been with us for a while. We're also we're Shopify partners, but we're also HubSpot partners. So when it comes into either B2B, where they're selling a product directly to a business, or if you're B2C, but you're dealing with a lot of wholesalers, so you have like a personal relationship you need to maintain, that's when we tend to say like, all right, let's involve a HubSpot. So you have like kind of more a CRM side to it.
So can I get you to come back again and talk about B2B next time?
Sure. Happy to.
That would be awesome. Well, I want to thank you. Really appreciate your time, Andrew. Andrew Maff, he is the CEO of BlueTuskr, multi-service agency for retail brands and B2B, and also podcaster extraordinaire. Thank you so much for joining. And to all of you listening, please rate and subscribe to the Ecom Edge on your favorite podcast streaming platform. Thank you all.
Thanks for having me.